Oh, you're doing the introduction? I'm sorry.
So it's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Nathan Carroll today, and a very warm welcome, sir, and to all the participants present here to attend the session. So, Dr. Nathan Carroll, to introduce you all to, who has completed his DO, MBA, and MPH, is right now a psychiatrist and the National Medical Director of Insight Health, President GHQA. He is the AI contributor of the paper, The Future of the Psychiatrist paper, and the editor of the recently released APA textbook, which is Internet Gaming Disorder, a clinical strategy guide for providers, parents, and players. His work and commentary have been featured in Time Magazine, Washington Post, the New York Times, Yahoo News, Newsweek, The Sun, and many more of such prominent outlets. He's active in his professional community, serving on several boards, including Secretary Treasurer of the New Jersey Psychiatric Association, the Rowan Virtua School of Medicine Alumni Association, and the American Psychiatric Associations Council on Mental Health IT, as well as the Council of Healthcare Systems and Financing. Dr. Carroll completed his psychiatry residency at Jersey Shore University Medical Center and is recently an American Psychiatric Association Foundation Leadership Fellow, serving as its chair. We are pleased to welcome you, sir, and I'd like to hand over the session to you to begin with. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the great introduction. And thank you everybody for joining us today. I'm really excited about this topic. If my bio didn't give it away, I'm very interested in this intersection between mental health and technology. I think there's a lot to talk about, much more than we can do justice to in this hour. So there is a particularly broad topic which I'm going to introduce today about the intersection between mental health and digital hyperconnectivity, and if there are any benefits of viewing digital hyperconnectivity as a toxic exposure through the lens of public health. We're going to go into a bunch of research. We're going to go into a bunch of defining what these terms are, right? Defining what digital hyperconnectivity is. But again, I can't stress enough, this talk will not do justice to the topic, unfortunately. There is just so much here. I want to say, quick caveat, if you hear my dog barking, I'm working from home today, so I may just need to let her out the door. She's also attending our meeting today, so I apologize if suddenly I have to let her out or something. She may make an appearance if she wants to sit on my lap. So yeah, all right, let's move on. My bio was already given, but I want to do some disclosures real quick. I do have a textbook which was just recently released by the APA. Some of the slides here will cite a couple of tables that we use in the textbook. None of the opinions today are represent the APA or my employers. There's no financial entanglement I have with any agency or group with this talk. This is really just an area of my own personal, professional, and academic interest. All right, so why this talk? Before I even launch into the learning objectives for it, let's talk about why this is a useful conversation to have. Public health. I see it as a very broad field, right? That incorporates traditionally like infectious disease, patterns of transmission, preventative measures, and so on and so on. I think tech usage and the impact of technology and mental health has a place in public health, has a very important place in public health. And look at the impact tech is having, right? There are, I would say at this point, the numbers definitely are higher than this. This is of end of June 2024, but over 5.5 billion people are mobile phone users. The average individual owns 3.6 devices that are connected to the internet, and the age of first use, 4 to 9 is cited here. But I've seen a lot of other research that says by the age of 12, kids are 12 months old. 12 months old. By the age of 12 months old, kids are using digital devices. So this is something that the exposure is very early on in childhood. The exposure increases with age, and with anything that the exposure is happening that early. I wonder about the mental health impacts, the physical health impacts. I just wonder about if it's doing anything. Sure, maybe it's benign, maybe it's not, but I think it needs further investigation to kind of explore if it is or it isn't. All right, some learning objectives for today. And some of these we're going to emphasize a little more than others just due to time constraints. We're going to talk about key terms. We're going to talk about the history of connectivity. This is not something that's a 21st century topic. This goes back as old as civilization. We're going to talk about developmental, neurological, biological impacts of connectivity. We're going to talk about theories of susceptibility. So one thing that I'm going to emphasize throughout this talk is that digital technology is a lot like water, right? You need water to survive, but you can also drown in water. It really depends on the exposure and the context of the exposure. Technology is the same thing. It's not the boogeyman. It's not all bad. It depends so much on context. And then we're going to talk about preventative measures for digital hyperconnectivity. So steps we can take to make sure that technology use is healthy, like drinking enough water and not drowning in it. So some key terms that I feel are absolutely essential here. So digital hyperconnectivity, what do I mean by this? And this is interesting. This is a term which is not widely used quite yet. It's emerging in use, this term. The American Society of Addiction Medicine is starting to use this as an umbrella term for a lot of conditions like internet gambling disorder, social media addiction, cell phone addiction, video game addiction. Falls under the umbrella of digital hyperconnectivity. But here's a working definition for now. It's a state of continuous and dense interconnection through both active and passive digital technologies, technology engagement, defined by a near constant communication, data exchange, real-time interaction across multiple platforms and devices. So basically, all those dings and pushes and notifications in the cell phone is a constant engagement. Is this digital hyperconnectivity, and how ubiquitous it is. It's just everywhere. I'm looking out around the room I'm in right now, and I can pick out like 5 devices that are connected to the internet, will give me alerts, and that I have to remember to silence, or they'll bug me at all hours. Dose-dependent toxicants is another important term for this talk. It's substances or exposures whose harmfulness or poisonous effects depend on the level, the dose, duration, route of exposure, rather than them being inherently toxic at all levels. The drowning in water example is a perfect example, right? So I really want to emphasize that. Individual susceptibility is another key topic here. So there's variations among individuals. Unlike a body of water where somebody may drown in it, the technology, one person may be perfectly fine with a certain exposure to technology, but that same level exposure to another person may be problematic. Alcohol can often be looked at that way. Some people drink very responsibly. Other people, one drink and that's it, and they're not going to be able to stop drinking. So there is an individual level of susceptibility to technology. And to emphasize kind of an example here with the individual susceptibility, it should be viewed with nuance. I have a case study here. One person spends 90 minutes on social media each day, but she uses it responsibly. She has no trouble disconnecting. She only uses it when appropriate. Her use is not problematic. We have another individual who's only on 60 minutes a day, but it's a struggle to disconnect. If she does not constantly monitor, or somebody monitors it for her, she will hide her usage. She'll continue using and not sleep. She'll extend it beyond the 60 minutes and I'll drop at the hat. It's problematic for her. 60 minutes is too long for her. Maybe any amount of time is too long because the individual susceptibility is different for Alexis in this situation. This is commonly observed with adolescents in particular. We see this individual level of susceptibility, and it speaks to other factors going on, some of which we'll cover here. All right, I'm not going to. This slide goes contrary to everything they teach you about making PowerPoint slides. It is just a dense wall of text. I won't read all of this, but these are some of the factors of, feel free to take a picture or something if you want to go through all this. These are some of the factors that contribute to digital hyperconnectivity. I want to emphasize, I'll just read the bottom here. Digital hyperconnectivity is the compression of time, attention, and social feedback into an always-on, algorithmically mediated environment. So it is just constant pressure by technology for engagement, constant. And they use all these different methods to accomplish that. All right. This slide is my own artwork, so not my own artwork. I stole this artwork off the internet. Credit in the notes. It's but I put it together very nicely, right? So this is a timeline of communication. So in the beginning, I said this communication thing isn't new. It's not. It's not. Humanity has been driven by evolving and innovating new forms of communication. It drives humanity forward. It drives civilization forward. Forward into good or bad, I'm not sure. I think the jury's still out sometimes, but it drives it forward. And so, major milestones from the earliest cave art and spoken language to Mesopotamia to Egyptian hieroglyphs to the Phoenician alphabet to courier systems, which much older than I realized. To paper in China, to the Gutenberg press, and I'm skipping so many milestones because I just ran out of space on this. And in fact, I had to do a second slide here to the telephone, to transatlantic wireless reception. But I want to call attention to something. There's almost a compression of these communication technologies, whereas some things took thousands of years, and then it took hundreds of years, and then it took decades, and now it's every month it seems like something new is coming out. And so there's definitely a compression of the advancement of this technology. I was a little blown away by the first the first satellite, but when that date was, that was much earlier than I thought it was, honestly. I thought it would be like the 70s, but yeah, the satellites, the email in the 70s, and then the World Wide Web becoming very widely and publicly available. Instant Messenger, if anybody remembers that, I grew up on that. And then look at social media right there. Every year we had a launch of a different form of social media. There was this explosion in the early 2000s. MySpace, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, just one after another. And then immediately following that, the modern smartphone era, right? So these technologies, they build upon each other and they leverage they leverage what the different technologies bring to the table in different ways. It's fascinating, the growth here. And then more recently, we have this explosion of AI for the last couple of years, which has just revolutionized things once again. And full disclosure, some of the graphics here were created with AI. Not this one I stole on the internet, but that's the citation at the bottom. But I think this is a good example of the progression of man nowadays, right? We are definitely moving more and more to this technology-driven existence. So communications in communication milestones in human development, they cross the lifespan, and that they're empowered by technology, but they're also human nature is communication, right? And on this next slide, I'm gonna skip ahead to, oh no, I took it out. Okay, but we have certain measurements of milestones when the first language appears, when there's multiple words being spoken. We keep track of this because it is a good metric of the milestones that people should advance through. And a lot of this technology really does hijack certain developmental states of young children when it's introduced very early. And it is important to make sure that they are not inappropriately leveraging technology, and they're not developing these milestones on their own. No, let me rephrase that. It's important that they're not inappropriately leveraging the technology instead of developing these milestones on their own. They really need to be able to do that. I'm especially worried about this with AI and individual decision making, and people defaulting to the AI for decision making. This is the latest frontier of technology and mental health. Now, social connection is often empowered through technology. And social connection itself represents a fundamental pillar of mental health. There is this field of mental health called lifestyle psychiatry, and it has 6 fundamental pillars to it. One of which is our social connections, making sure we have healthy social connections. The others are diet and nutrition, restful sleep, avoiding toxic substances, exercise, and my goodness, I'm blanking on one of them. When it comes back to me, I'll let you all know what that last one is. Diet, exercise, social connection. It's all right. Not relevant to this topic. But the role social connection does play in our mental health is it cannot be understated. We are social creatures at our core. And the American College of Occupational Environmental Medicine recognizes social connectedness as one of the core pillars of lifestyle medicine, alongside exercise. Oh, they're right there. Exercise, nutrition, sleep, stress management. That's the one I forgot. And the avoidance of risky substances. See, I could have just cheated and looked at my slides. All right. So there's a lot of research on the importance of social connection and mental health. I won't read this slide. The citations are included in the footnotes in the bottom. If anybody would like a copy of the slides, let me know. I'm happy to send it out. My email's at the end of this, and it has all the citations if anybody would like to read the papers that are cited. But there's tremendous amount of research into this, and it's not always positive, right? The lifestyle psychiatry pillar states that the quality of our social relationships is what's a pillar, right? If we have toxic social relationships, that's unhealthy for us. So social media technology, social media in particular, can be very problematic depending on the quality of engagement there, right? Online bowling is a real problem with youth, and so that's not a positive social relationship, and that can really impact people's mental health badly. All right, so there is this concept of the social cure, which refers to the phenomenon by where social connectedness and group members actively improve mental health outcomes amongst the membership, right? Rather than simply reflecting pre-existing psychological well-being. This concept came up because there was people wondered if good mental health led to positive social connection, or if it was the reverse. Good social connection led to positive mental health. And it is probably bi-directional to a degree, but we know that people with healthier social connections have better mental health outcomes. They have less depression, less anxiety. It is very, very important. And we have this loneliness. Nothing wrong with the type of connection we have, where it is not fulfilling the true need for connected connection. And over 80% of individuals report some degree of loneliness, and we see trends that this is increasing. And so the question I pose is digital hyperconnectivity the cure to this epidemic of loneliness? Because we seem to be doubling down on it all the time, or is it actually the cause of the loneliness? And or maybe it's multifactorial. Maybe it's just not helping. All right, so let's look at some research connecting digital hyperconnectivity with issues, problems, right? So there is there is a lot of research showing the length of time you spend on social media, on these digital devices, can be problematic, right? That example I gave in the beginning, one person had 90 minutes on the digital devices, another had 60 minutes on the digital devices. Problematic for the one with less time on it. There's no one size fits all rule here, but there's a lot of research showing that about 3 hours a day, people who tend to be on digital devices, on social media for 3 hours or more a day, that's sort of the critical threshold. That may be evidence of problematic usage at that point. So that's something, you can screen for that. You can ask how long they're on it. A lot of these cell phones now show you how much time you're spending on them each day. I would caution everybody. I think there is a difference between passive and sort of mindless engagement with productive engagement. If you're on Slack 3 hours a day and it's part of your job, that's not problematic usage. That's simply part of your job. You're doing that because of work. If you're mindlessly scrolling on TikTok for 3 hours a day, that's very different. We also see that there's a J-shaped relationship curve. It's not linear, not necessarily. It's not a linear increase. Loneliness increases gradually with moderate use, but then increases really sharply with excessive use. And again, individual susceptibility. The number of confounders here is just astronomical, right? Another research study here, online experiences, loneliness in young adults. So there's a paradoxical relationship with loneliness and digital hyperconnectivity that they saw. The effects really depend on the type of engagement rather than the amount of time spent online. The quality and nature of the engagement was key here. So this is social media use and loneliness when face-to-face communication is restricted. This was done during the COVID pandemic. And they found, despite people being more connected online, they were more depressed and lonely. And I think COVID was a major confounder there. I think the contrast between the engagement online with what they could do in real life really was depressing to people. But it speaks a lot to how this facsimile of connectedness through digital connectedness does not take the place of real life connectedness. Just because it looks the same, and it doesn't mean it is the same. Loneliness was more frequent smartphone engagements, pickups, rather than total screen time predicted lower levels of loneliness. So individuals who are actually engaging with someone as opposed to just using the phone were less lonely. And that makes sense, right? Then this speaks to it being used as a tool to further genuine engagement as opposed to replacement for genuine engagement. And then social media, across development, age really is a huge factor here. So people who engage with social media at younger ages are exposed to more detrimental effects on average, unfortunately. And there's a lot of evidence showing that usage before the age of, I've heard different milestones, 9 and 12 are commonly cited. Let's just take the 9 one, right? Is associated with higher diagnoses of autism spectrum disorder, higher diagnoses of ADHD, a lot of neurodevelopmental conditions are diagnosed. They're more highly correlated with younger engagement of social media. So there is an impact here developmentally. So is it a toxin? Is it a cure, right? I just presented a mixed picture there, right? Where it helped with loneliness in certain situations, it increased loneliness in other situations. It's hard to say. Based on just these, what I presented, I mean, we can boil it down to five things here. Time spent online, right? Over 3 hours corresponds to increased internalizing of problems. The quality and nature of the engagement. Is it genuine connection versus um, passive consumption or engagement? Big difference between those two. The number and types of devices engaged with is a big factor. There's a lot of marketing studies and showing that people will watch Netflix while having the cell phone open, while having a laptop open. So they have three digital devices they're engaging with for three different purposes. Their focus is not on any one thing. It's spread all over the place, and it's just the quality is very low with the engagement. In fact, there are some reports they're making the scripts of Netflix shows simpler for people to follow because they're distracted on their cell phone while they're watching it. And if the script is too complex, people are they're tuning out and changing the channel. So that's concerning to me. The patterns of engagement is important too. And then, the last thing I would ask is which psychological, social, cognitive, functional, or other needs are being met with the technology? That is a big question I ask, right? Is like a child replacing genuine in real life friendships with virtual friendships? And to a degree, I mean that if they're expanding their friend network and they're becoming more of a global citizen, awesome. But I'm seeing also a trend towards things like AI friends in lieu of real friends and things like that. And that's really concerning because that again speaks to a facsimile. It speaks to sort of this fakeness that we're replacing we're replacing genuine experience with. So there are physical benefits to digital hyperconnectivity. Again, digital hyperconnectivity, mixed bag here. It can improve physical activity. I have a smartwatch that yells at me when I'm not getting enough steps in and I'm not burning enough calories and things like that. I'm not standing enough, drinking enough water. So I think these things are good. They can be good reminders. They can be good with engagement. They democratize a lot of information. I think AI is wonderful if you're getting started with certain diet routines, certain exercise routines, and you just want to kind of explore what information's out there. It's a good place to start, and then you should follow it up with talking to a professional, of course. But great place to start for information. So I think it can empower a lot of health behaviors. It can enhance healthcare access. Telepsychiatry has done wonders for enhancing access. So that form of technology is just phenomenal. A lot of really good applications here. All right, this slide was made by AI. So if some of these words don't make sense, it's because I couldn't get all of it too. The AI was just doing its thing. So that should say feedback delays on the bottom. I do not know what they thought it said. But if anybody has heard of the three-body problem in physics, we have kind of a three-body problem in mental health too, right? And the three-body problem in mental health is, how do I see myself? How do other people see me? And what is the true self that's between these perceptions? And I think the internet really does a number on this, right? Because there's a way I see myself and there's a way I present myself on the internet, right? And then there's the reality. We see this a lot with like Instagram and these social media sites where you put up, maybe you go on a vacation, you take perfect pictures and there's a waterfall and there's the beach and oh my God, looking at this person living this perfect life. That's such a false snapshot of the reality of the individual. And then the true individual may be like, oh, the place is hot, I feel miserable, I'm spending too much money, I'm anxious about that I have to take this return flight and go back to work. So there's the reality, there's the presentation, and then there's the truth, which is somewhere in between. And it's an interesting concept. This breaks it down into the phenomenal self, the reflected self, the objective self. I really am concerned how social media can potentially amplify this problem of self-perception due to the instability that's introduced by social media, how we perceive ourselves, how we perceive others, and what's objectively true. We're in many ways moving further and further away from objective truth through the engagement of technology. And it becomes almost a overemphasis on the reflected self, the likes and the shares and all that. What's going to drive engagement from others, and there's a distance created between the phenomenal self, how we perceive ourselves, and what we prioritize, which is how we're perceived by others. When really, a lot of literature says that we should be moving the opposite direction. The true self and the self that we perceive, we should be trying to shrink that distance, and we should be caring less about how other people perceive us. But that is not the way. That's not what social media rewards at all. Although, there has been some research saying that authenticity by younger generations is more and more rewarded online. But the pessimist in me says, how truly authentic is that, right? Are we seeing true authenticity, or are we seeing a show of authenticity? But that is a rabbit hole that I will not go down right now. Let us keep moving on with this digital hyperconnectivity. All right. So digital hyperconnectivity, diagnosing it. We have framework in place, and this is framework which I've adapted from internet gaming disorder, gaming addiction, according to the DSM-5. We use many of the same criteria for gambling disorder, but there's some other additional criteria with like doubling down and things like that, which I won't get into. But a lot of this is still very applicable to digital hyperconnectivity or problematic levels of engagement with digital devices. There's 9 criteria here to make a diagnosis, and I put that in quotes. You would need 5 criteria. I put that in quotes because with gaming addiction, at least, this is not something the DSM recognizes as a diagnosis yet. It's an area for further study. Gambling disorder right now is the only behavioral disorder according to the DSM. But we are exploring these other behavioral addictions for the future. This is the direction we're heading in. The 9 criteria: escapism, salience like preoccupation, withdrawal, tolerance, loss of control, loss of other interests, continued use despite problems, deception, jeopardizing opportunities. Highly relevant when looking at problematic device use, digital hyperconnectivity, right? Is it leading us to these directions, right? And just glancing at this, we can see how some of these devices and the algorithms are developed to reinforce salience, right? People are thinking about engaging online. They're reinforcing things like loss of control, doom scrolling, getting lost in kind of like the TikTok algorithm and you lose track of time. They're programmed this way. So it's almost like shooting fish in the barrel, unfortunately, as they say. Here are this comes from the textbook with the video games, and I only put this slide and the next slide up to point out that we can land on objective measures for these 9 criteria. Now it still needs to be further studied, and we need more consensus what problematic digital engagement, digital device engagement looks like in terms of time and whatnot. I think it needs quite a bit of study. That means there's research emerging right now, but we definitely can boil it down to objective measures, and I think that is exactly the direction we need to head in to start producing public health guidelines regarding how much is too much. And at the very end of this lecture, I have some primary, secondary, tertiary preventative suggestions for public health too. So susceptibility. We're getting near the end of this. I have a couple slides on susceptibility. So what makes one individual susceptible to digital hyperconnectivity functioning as a toxin versus a cure? Pre-existing mental health conditions and loneliness, that's one susceptibility. But there's a lot of research showing that there's a bidirectional relationship. And so people who are already lonely may turn to digital platforms as an escape from social pain, which paradoxically increases their loneliness rather than alleviating it. There's nothing magical about jumping on Instagram. In fact, it may amplify it because now, out of billions and billions of people in the world, you feel even more lonely because you're not making connections. The mental health issues are definitely a susceptibility factor, and it speaks to the need for re-emphasizing real life engagement and treatment and help. Communication style, self-disclosure. This is an interesting observation. So people who can go online and truly self-disclose what they think and they feel genuinely and honestly, they have different levels of stress, right? So people with that ability to go online and that engage in that way, they're less susceptible to the negative effects. So those people who you read and they make statements and you're like, why is this person commenting this? Those people are probably happier because they have just no qualms about writing what they think and they feel. And the people who are reading things kind of passively, there's some research that shows that they may be more susceptible to the negative effects. Not that they're depressed, not that they're anxious, but they're more susceptible, potentially, the ones who passively engage. Fear of missing out, this is a huge driver. This is a massive, massive driver. So fear of missing out is really problematic with social media engagement. It leaves people to engage with things real late at night to figure out how the Grammys went or the Oscars went, or these prediction markets that are emerging, right? There's this constant engagement with them. The FOMO is massive driver, and people have made billions just capitalizing upon society's FOMO. So that's a huge factor for digital hyperconnectivity and toxic engagement. Reflective smartphone disengagement. This is a really fancy way to say, can I set boundaries with my smartphone, right? Can I tell myself and stick to the boundaries I set? If I say I'm only going to be on TikTok for 30 minutes and I'm able to set a timer and then at 30 minutes turn that off and I'm done, that's a good sign. If the person's like, hey, this last video is pretty interesting, I'm going to do it for 5 more minutes, that's not a good sign. That means that the boundaries are very, very wishy-washy, and that predicts more and more kind of toxic levels of engagement, susceptibility to toxic levels of engagement. All right. Right at the end here, so primary prevention, secondary prevention, tertiary prevention. Primary prevention, presenting onset, this is difficult because this requires alliances and agreement with the tech developers, right? To create kind of technology engagement norms that discourage constant availability. This is completely contrary to what they want because they want more engagement. They don't want you turning their platform off because you'll go to another platform, right? If Instagram locked you out after 30 minutes of engagement, nobody would use it. If they said, hey, you know what? It's healthiest if you're only on this for 30 minutes. So we're going to give you 30 minutes and then we're going to shut the app off for 24 hours. Who would design something like that? So it's just not, they're not incentivized to do this. It's just not what people want. And if they did that, a competitor who didn't do that would emerge, and everybody would be on the competitor. Nobody would use the 30-minute a day social media. So it is very tricky. You need this buy-in, and you need almost this buy-in amongst everybody, which we're not there society-wise, not even close. Default notification limits, friction by design. I have this debate with teachers all the time because I do a lot of work with the school systems about midnight deadlines, right? Who here has been in a course where they said your homework is due 11:59 by this date, right? What does everybody do? Everybody finishes that homework at 11 p.m. to 11:59, right? So everybody's up late. The adrenaline's rushing. Now it's midnight and they're not getting a good night's sleep. We are doing this to ourselves with stuff like that. But then the teachers go to me, they go, well, everybody's jobs, and then there's schools and the sports, and they're doing this and they're that. I'm like, okay, sure. But still, by setting these deadlines that late, we're really we're negatively impacting people's mental health, and we're teaching them very bad skills with engagement with technology. I have that repeated twice. I don't know why I did that. Yeah, this was created with AI too. I had to beautify the slides, so I think I got a little confused. Digital literacy, I think that's important. There's no digital literacy. We don't teach this to kids, or if we do, it's very light. I think we need to do far more with teaching digital literacy to kids. A lot of it falls upon the parents, and the parents are just susceptible, or it's almost like the kids are far more savvy with the technology than the parents are. And so you have the person who knows it less trying to teach literacy to the kid who knows it far better, and it's backwards. Organizational policies protecting offline time. This is big. This is big in healthcare. We unfortunately incentivize, they call it pajama time, where people are finishing their notes late at night. They're finishing work they need to do at home, and we just turn a blind eye to it. We don't look at it usually, and yeah, that can be very problematic. Secondary prevention levels, right, for detecting and mitigating early harm, screening people for overload, sleep disruption, attention fatigue, very important. Again, it repeated things. That's wacky. All right, this is AI. I should have looked closer for duplicate. I trust AI too much. See, there's me offloading to AI my trust there. Perfect example. Time use feedback, dashboards, usage audits, early interventions, managerial clinical check-ins when strain appears. All right, I know this is being recorded, so I'm going to try to censor myself slightly with what I'm about to say. There was some organization, I will not mention who they are, who was asked for input regarding from Congress regarding, oh, even that might have been too much, but they were asked for input from Congress regarding the these big tech companies like Microsoft and Nintendo and Meta, right? And the organization recommended to these companies that they remove kids from the algorithms of what they were doing. And the company said it would be way too expensive for us to screen anybody retroactively and figure out and pull them out of the algorithms. We could do that moving forward for 13 and older, have an opt out, but it would be too expensive. And the pessimist in me, I raised my hand and I said, wait a minute. These guys are making so much money off of tracking people, right? And they don't have the money to remove them. Not only that, they're saying it'd be really hard to identify, the user who's on Roblox, who's looking at Bluey, who's looking at children's shows. All right, maybe there's a couple of adults out there, right? But I have a feeling 99% of people who are following these particular patterns are children. Are you telling me you cannot identify these patterns and that would be too expensive? So there is a lot of pushback regarding preventative measures and screening and investment like that. And I suspect it's because they're making a lot of money out of advertisement and whatnot with it. Early interventions are really key. Digital breaks, mode switching, batching, managerial or clinical check-ins when strain appears. I have a feeling, I have more than a feeling because the research supports it, but I have a feeling we should do more in looking how technology and digital hyperconnectivity contributes to healthcare burnout. I think that's an area that we should do more in with healthcare systems. Because I know just with the EMRs, you're balancing 30 things in your EMR, your electronic medical record, and it gets overwhelming. Just the bandwidth isn't there. I gotta wrap this up, sorry. And last section here, tertiary protections and preventions, structured digital detox, usage restriction plans. I feel like we can do more with the digital detox area with having programs for detox, developing programs for detox, clinical treatment for anxiety, depression, burnout, treating underlying conditions like anxiety, depression, which leads to unhealthy engagement, critical. And workplace accommodations and role design, rebranding, offline routines. I think I know what it did. I think it tried to make everything equal, so it duplicated one in each column, which is wacky. All right. So thank you, everybody. I'm going to use the last 5 minutes or so for questions. My email's at the bottom if you want to reach out to me. If you want a copy of the slides, happy to provide them. I'm going to open this up for any questions. And if not, no worries. I threw a lot at you. We were danced all around with hyperconnectivity. Let's see. I will stop sharing too. Let's see. Oh, share and
Hi Nathan. This is
hey,
Joan Duggan. That was a
hey,
fantastic
Joan.
talk, and I have a quick question. Is there any
Sure.
social? So they've been showing that, for example, for dementia, that there are certain like
Yeah.
video games and things that will
Yeah.
help your brain. Is there any social media for kids that actually helps their brain?
Yeah, I think, I would need to look a little more into the company names, but I have heard about very structured social media environments where it is very a lot of schools have internal systems too. The where they'll have very educationally driven and focused and intelligence building, social skill building driven social medias that have a lot of supervision. I would make an argument because nothing comes to mind that's a publicly available social media. It's probably a market for that, honestly. I think that's exactly what we need is a very healthy social media environment. I remember in the 2000s, they had a number of products which, like the Penguin Club and things like that, which had a lot of positive elements to them, but there was a creep of a certain predatory element to them, and we're seeing this a lot with Roblox, unfortunately, where there's a dangerousness element because there's an unstructured element. But any kind of social media where it's highly structured can be very, very positive for youth. Sorry, Joan, I can't point to any specific ones, but that's a great question. And the potential's there. The potential's there, 100%. And for dementia, yeah, there's so much potential there too. No problem.
We have a question in the chat box. Kendra asks that
Oh,
is a master's in
cool.
public health necessary to get into public health if you have a nursing degree and
Oh,
would like to do research in the area?
no. No, not at all. Not at all. I think the Masters of Public Health does equip you with a lot of the tools that you can leverage with public health. But no, anybody can get involved with public health interventions and research. I mean, the nursing degree alone is gives you a phenomenal perspective with healthcare and healthcare systems and clinical needs and. Really, it's identifying where the need is, right? Is there an unmet need here? And seeing what sort of public health interventions could help address that need. So to answer your question, no, you really don't need a master's degree in public health to get into public health and working in public health and public health research. It helps. I won't ever say it doesn't help. It really does help a lot. And I would recommend if your interests are really aligned with public health and you do a lot with that, I would look into it eventually. But no, to get started, no, not at all, not at all. Joan, you still there?
Yeah.
I think a lot of our classmates had public health experience before the degree, right?
Yes, correct. And they define that as even like just working in infectious diseases, for example, which is what I
Yeah.
worked in. You had to have at least for that particular program, you had to have some statistics background and at least I think it was 3 or
Yeah.
5 years of some type of work in medicine or health that counted for that. Because we had people whose public health experience was working on designing like Epic
Yeah.
products.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So yeah, diversity. Thanks, Joan. It's huge diversity. You bring a lot with the nursing degree. I see another question here. Okay.
Yeah.
What is my opinion on technology? Oh, absolutely, Cassandra. What is my opinion on technology helping the needs or addicting humans to it? Oh, that comes down to that individual susceptibility. It really does. Here's my rule of thumb. If you're using technology to do more, not less, then it's probably healthy. So if you're using technology like AI, right, to do more, to be more productive, that's a healthy usage, right? If you're using technology so you're not thinking anymore and it's doing the thinking for you, not a healthy usage of it. So that's a really good rule of thumb to kind of use. Doesn't fit every situation, but it fits many of them. Now, addicting humans to it can be addictive with problematic usage for sure. I wouldn't say all technology is inherently addictive. Some technologies developed to be addictive by nature, but it's individual, case by case basis, individual susceptibility to individual susceptibility. Good, great question. Great question. And I'm no Luddite. I have like a bazillion devices in my room right now. I'm a fan of technology. It's just with caution. I think I got time for one more question. Then I got to hop to do another lecture.
I think we are done, I guess.
We're done? Ah, phenomenal. Well, thank you, everybody.
So I'll just take a moment to thank Dr. Nathan Carroll. We absolutely love this session throughout, sir. Got to know a lot about what are the levels of exposure, strategies to disconnect, and then whether it's actually helping us or not, or how addictive it can be. And the three body problem. I mean, I got a reality check for now. I hope many others got too. So yeah, and I think my personal opinion is that we definitely do need some kind of guidelines for controlling the addiction and everything. So thank you so much, sir, for your time. Thank you.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Good seeing you all.
Yeah.
I'll see you at the next lecture. Have a great one.
Thank you, sir. Have a
Bye,
great day.
everybody.
Thank you everyone for attending.